The 2024 NBA playoffs are just about to tip off. In this video, we're going to discuss important NBA facts and assessments for each first round matchup in this postseason. Let's start in the Eastern Conference. We got the number 1 Celtics versus the number 8 Heat. The last time the Heat and Celtics faced off in the postseason was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and the 8th seeded Heat beat the 2nd seeded Celtics in a tough 7 games. The Heat started their playoffs last season upsetting the 1st seeded Bucks. Could we see some deja vu in this series? Or is this Celtics team a different beast than last year? But truthfully, last year means jack squat. Jimmy Butler is expected to miss several weeks due to an MCL situation, as he re-aggravated it during the play-in tournament game against the 76ers. Without Jimmy Butler, this Heat team is just not the same, and even if we assume he was healthy, let's take a look at how they performed against the Celtics this season with him on the court. Remember, the Celtics this season swept the Heat during their regular season matchups, and it wasn't even close, as the margin of victory had an average of 15 points in the Celtics' favor. Next up, we have the 2nd seeded Knicks versus the 7th seeded 76ers. Joel Embiid faced the Knicks just once this season on January 5th in that 92-128 blowout loss. The Knicks had the 76ers number this season, winning 3 out of the 4 matchups. In each win, it was a blowout win with an average margin of 26 points in the Knicks' favor. The one game they lost was a nail-biter game by 3, and it was a gritty, low-scoring game, 79-73 in the Sixers' favor. And that was actually the lowest scoring game in the entire NBA this season for both teams. Now, it's hard to use this regular season as a measuring stick because Joel only faced them once, so it would be tough to use that one game to predict a full set of data to get an accurate assessment. The biggest concern though is Joel's health. He looked pretty banged up against the Heat, and his knee is still giving him issues despite his ability to, on paper, stay on the court. The biggest question is, sure, Joel Embiid might be able to play, but are we getting 100% Joel? Are we getting 80% Joel or 50% Joel? We really won't know until the games tip off. And now for the 3rd seeded Bucks versus 6th seeded Pacers. The biggest takeaway of this series is that Giannis is expected to miss the start of the series against the Pacers with a calf strain. He was initially doubtful for game 1, but now more recent reports suggest he might miss a little bit more. Remember, he did miss the final 3 regular season games due to this very same injury. I guess his timetable of return might depend on how the series plays out. Say if the series starts off with a huge Bucks lead, they may continue to rest him, which means this series is certainly Dame time. Damian Lillard averaged 29.9 points per game, 7.6 assists, and 4.3 rebounds in every game without Giannis this season. Nice stats, but not so nice record. His record though is 4-4, break even without him. The Pacers are the number 1 scoring team in the NBA and the most efficient team in the NBA. So these points they're racking up isn't volume scoring, they're taking the shots, they're making the shots. Without Giannis's defense or rebounding, this could be trouble for the Bucks. There's a lot of pressure on Damian Lillard to step up with Giannis out. And last but not least for the Eastern Conference, it's the 4th seeded Cavaliers versus the 5th seeded Magic. The last time the Cavaliers and Magic faced off in the playoffs was the first time they faced off in the playoffs, and that was all the way back in 2009. When LeBron hit that amazing buzzer beater in Game 2, and Dwight and the Orlando Magic ended up winning that series in 6. But both teams are completely different. In fact, the entire NBA is completely different, as LeBron James is the only active player among both of those playoff rosters still playing in the league today. Technically, you can count Tyronn Lue too, but he's a coach for the Clippers, not a player. If we take a closer look at more recent rosters for this team, Paolo Banchero is 2-6 all time against the Cavaliers. This is his first run in the playoffs, and in the Donovan Mitchell era, this is the 2nd run in the playoffs, technically 3rd postseason if you want to count the play-in tournament the Cavs had. Now, speaking of Donovan Mitchell, this is a huge postseason for him. If the Cavs do poorly, if they get upset in the first round, the Cavaliers could blow up their entire roster. We could see Spider-Man in New York City, or somewhere else, and this rebuild could have been kind of a stall. Only time will tell. If the Cavs have a deep playoff run, they could keep this core together and see where it goes. The Magic, however, there's not a lot of pressure for them. This is their first playoffs. They got a young core who looks like they're going to stay around for the foreseeable future. The heat is definitely in Cleveland. We got the 1st-seeded Thunder versus 8th-seeded Pelicans. The biggest elephant in the room is Zion Williamson, and I don't mean that as some sort of fat joke. Like, we really need to know what's up with his health. He missed the play-in tournament game because of a hamstring injury, and he's likely going to miss the next 1 to 2 weeks too, so for this series they're going to be without him. But even if he was healthy, let's not pretend like this wasn't going to be an uphill battle anyway, because if we look at the regular season, the Thunder seem to live by the 3 or die by the 3, and their matchup against the Pelicans during the regular season is a good example. They held a 2-1 regular season edge over the Pelicans, but in their loss, they shot 20% from beyond the arc. The Pelicans like to use Larry Nance Jr. over Jonas Valanciunas when they match up against the Thunder, and there's a good reason for this. Larry gets more minutes during the Thunder matchups versus other matchups, and it has everything to do with pacing. They know the Thunder is a fast team, and regardless, the Thunder should have an edge in this series, considering the Pelicans have a defensive challenge on the perimeter when they go big, and they have an interior issue when they go small. Anything could happen in this series because the Thunder do lack experience in the postseason, but you could similarly argue that for the Pelicans too. Next up, it's the 2nd-seeded Nuggets versus 7th-seeded Lakers. The last time the Nuggets faced the Lakers in the playoffs was last season when the Nuggets swept the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals 4-0, and 3 of those wins were by 5 or more. Only Game 2 was a win by 2 points, so that was a fairly easy series for the Nuggets. During the regular season this season, the Nuggets swept the regular season series 3-0 and won those games by an average of 10 points. The Nuggets do have the Lakers number, but never say never when my sunshine is playing for the Lakers. Hats off to Pookie Bear LeBron James for being a part of 17 playoff appearances. Only 4 players have done more. Tim Duncan and Kareem have 18 appearances. Karl Malone and John Stockton have 19 appearances. Could LeBron James move mountains and defeat the Nuggets? Those are some pretty tall Rockies, but the sun is a lot bigger than the earth. I'm not making sense here. The Nuggets should win this series, but who knows? Moving on, we got the 3rd-seeded Timberwolves versus the 6th-seeded Suns. This matchup is unique for 2 reasons. 1, the Suns and Wolves have never faced each other in the postseason before, so this is new postseason territory. And 2, the Suns ended their regular season beating the Wolves 125-106, so both teams have a feel for each other heading into this playoffs. The Suns seem to have the Wolves number. Phoenix won all 3 regular season matchups this season. 2 of those were in April, which is super important. And in the last 3 seasons, the Suns won 9 of the last 10 games against the Wolves. Anthony Edwards averages nearly 26 points per game regularly, but specifically when facing the Suns, he averages 20.9 points per game, and he only beat the Suns twice in his entire career so far. Do not let the Suns seed number fool you. They have a higher win percentage this season than they did last season, even though they were a higher seed last season. The West was just crazy this season. And last but certainly not least, we have the 4th-seeded Clippers versus the 5th-seeded Mavericks. Oh boy, where have we seen this before? Plenty of times actually. Luka Doncic and the Mavs are 0-2 in playoff series matchups against the Clippers. This will be Luka's 3rd time against LAC, and maybe 3 times is the charm. Kawhi Leonard recently has been dealing with some right knee inflation, but the Clippers stated they're not concerned. However, at the time of this recording, they've also been pretty vague on if, when, and what level Kawhi will return to when he gets back onto the roster. Now, both teams have a lot at stake. The Clippers have been promising to be a title team for many years now, and Luka Doncic is trying to beat the stat pattern allegations. If he does not win this series, if he gets bounced in the first round, a lot of people will consider him to be a stat pattern. And if the Clippers get bounced in the first round, what's going to be their excuse this time? Injuries again? That seems to always be their excuse. This is a must-win series for each team, but obviously only one can win. So here was a quick assessment of each first round in the 2024 playoffs. Let me know down below who you think is going to win each round and who you think is even going to win it all this year. Don't forget to dunk on that like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. I'm Rebound Rewind, and I'll fast forward to you later.